You're listening to the Platform Launchers podcast. I'm John Stange, and as always, it's great to have you with us this week as we talk about building and growing and monetizing your online platform. We talk about taking your passions and turning them into a platform that can lead to you earning a healthy and hopefully even sizable paycheck. And we have a lot of fun talking about all sorts of subjects here on the Platform Launchers podcast. But one of the things that we're going to be talking about this week is the idea of coaching. Many people talk about coaching. Many of us have actually paid to be coached. I have paid coaches and have sought the counsel and the guidance and the direction of multiple coaches in my life. Maybe you've experienced the same thing, whether you played sports or whether you were looking for business coaching or whether you're looking to develop something related to some of your entrepreneurial habits or maybe even just your own emotions or spiritual coaching or something along those lines. It wouldn't surprise me to know that many of us have already sought the outside help of a coach. And so we're going to be talking about coaching this week, and I'm really looking forward to doing that. In fact, I'm going to be highlighting a particular book that I think you're going to find beneficial. Before we dig in, just want to let you know very quickly that if you stop at platformlaunchers.com, if you head over to our website, you can download our free 21-day platform development planning guide that'll show you all the details that you need to know to be able to walk through the basics of outlining your online platform. If you've ever thought about taking the subjects that you care most about and turning those into something that allows you to even be a bit of an online influencer, you can take that platform development planning guide, download it for free at platformlaunchers.com, and make use of that as you kind of plan out some of your next steps. You can also join our membership community for the next couple weeks and do that absolutely free. You can take it for a test drive. Again, it's at platformlaunchers.com. You can see all the details there, but our members get access to our vast video library of hundreds of hours of online platform development topics and monetization and guest experts and all sorts of things we talk about. So again, stop by the website, platformlaunchers.com, download the freebies, make good use of them, and maybe we'll even get to see you face-to-face on one of these calls in coming weeks. Now, a moment ago, I told you we're going to be talking about coaching, and I'm going to start us off here with just a few questions. And the first question is this: what do you do when someone comes to you for advice? What do you do when someone comes to you for advice? So, and another way we could ask that is, how do you respond when somebody seeks you out and begins asking you for counsel on a particular subject? Do you have a go-to approach for handling that? If someone comes to you for advice or someone's seeking your counsel, how do you respond? What do you do? Well, for me, for many years, when this would happen, I would kind of treat all conversations like that essentially the same way. So when people would come to me for counsel or if they would want coaching on something, my thought was that it's my job, and I still frequently do this, and sometimes it is appropriate, but in general, my thought was it's my goal. I'm going to attempt to give whoever is seeking coaching from me, I'm going to attempt to give them the best answers that I can, and I'm going to attempt to give them the most information I possibly can, as much information as possible. And that sounds well and good, and there certainly is a time for that, and sometimes that's exactly what someone's coming to you for. But when I look back at many of the counseling sessions I've had with people or the coaching sessions I've had with people, when I look back at those meetings, it's clear that in many of them, I made a big mistake. And the big mistake that I made was that I did most of the talking and I did very little listening. And again, sometimes that's a bit of a struggle that I think some of us don't even realize is a struggle, because we think if someone comes to us for coaching, that's what they want to hear. They want to hear us talk. But there's more to coaching than just us talking. I was making a mistake by doing very little listening. And that's something that I've been trying to rectify in the present. Now, if you have been reading the Platform Launchers blog, or if you've been listening to our podcast for any length of time, or if you're following us on YouTube, same content, right? You see the same topics. We bring them up in each area, depending on where you like to get your content from. But if you've been accessing our content in any of those three spots, you've heard me bring up the subject of coaching in the past. This isn't something I've brought up just once. This isn't the first time that I've ever brought this subject up. It's a topic that I actually get a lot of questions about. And I think the reason I get so many questions about it is because it's a subject that's highly relevant in the world of online influence. It's very highly relevant for those of us who are trying to build message-based online platforms. So I get that. For many of us, and I know some people that this is a major driver of their platform, but for many, many people, it can also be a major source of their income. And there are some people that make their entire income primarily from coaching. And if you're listening right now, maybe you're one of those people. And so if you find yourself in a spot like that, whether you're doing a little bit of coaching or whether you're doing a lot, you want to make sure you're doing a quality job when you're serving other people. When other people are going to make decisions based on what they hear from your mouth, what they hear coming from your brain, if they're going to be making decisions based on these things, obviously we want to make sure we're doing a great job when we're trying to serve other people. Now, when think about the stage that you're at right now with your online platform, and you're sharing your message, you're getting your content out there. And I'll say this, whether you're brand new at developing your online platform, or if you have been actively building your online business for a while, offering coaching can be a wise service to offer. I often tell people it may help you monetize your platform faster than some of the other options that we regularly talk about. But if you choose to do this, the other question I want us to wrestle with is this: how should you coach those who seek your help? How should you do this? Are there principles that we would do well to implement? Recently, and I mentioned this to our membership community, the Members Club, just a few moments ago before we went live with the podcast, mentioned to them that recently David Steininger, who is a member of Platform Launchers, he's part of our online community, that and by the way, he's the founder of his own platform called the Self-Employment Sidekick, so definitely check that out on YouTube in particular. But recently, David Steininger, who doesn't live too far from me, he actually lent me a book. He handed me a physical, actually he handed it to my wife who gave it to me, a physical copy of a particular book that he said, I want you to check this out because this is right up your lane. This is the type of stuff you love. I think this is a book you'll really enjoy. It's a book he recently read and got a lot of benefit from, and it's a book that, like I said, he just lent me. And the book is called The Coaching Habit. So if you're on YouTube right now and you're kind of watching us that way, I'm holding the book up. If you're listening on the podcast, you can't see this, but this is what the cover looks like. It's blue and yellow. You could find it very easily, but it's called The Coaching Habit. It's a book by Michael, I guess his name is Michael Bungay Stanier. And it's a book that focuses on simplifying coaching practices to make them more effective and impactful. And it's a great book. It's a very interesting book. I love the way he puts it together. I love his writing style. And I'd say this, if your schedule allows, I'd encourage you to grab a copy so you could spend time thinking through everything he shares. You could read through it. I know several of our members told me, one in particular, told me that he listened to it on he listened to the audiobook of it just today because he knew we were going to be talking about it this week as the topic of our call. But I'd encourage you to check it out, listen to the audiobook or read the physical copy, whatever you prefer. But for the sake of time, I want to do you a favor, and I'd like to actually highlight some of the main coaching concepts that the author brings to our attention in the book because it's fascinating and it's useful, and it's a shift from what I think many of us think we must do when we're offering other people coaching. Now, one of the things you'll notice about this book is that he breaks it down into 7 essential coaching questions. And he introduces throughout this book 7 questions or powerful questions that can help coaches and managers and others that are trying to provide guidance, mentors even. It can provide us guidance toward having more meaningful conversations with the people that we're trying to help. And the idea behind the questions that he put together here, and I'm going to give you the full list of questions in just a little bit. But the idea behind these is that these questions are designed to, as he would say, cut through the noise and get to the heart of the matter. And he feels like, and he finds it in his experience, that addressing things, if you're in the coach's chair, that if you address things from a questioning standpoint, if you offer the right kind of questions to the people that you're trying to help, you're about to uncover some very helpful information. You're going to cut through the noise. You're going to get to the heart of the matter. You're going to be able to help people better than you possibly assume you could do. Now, in the book, he talks about the habits that good coaches start to develop. And so he emphasizes the importance of adopting a coaching habit by asking more questions and giving less advice. That's a huge premise of what he talks about here. The goal, he would say, is to empower others to find their own solutions and their own insights. And I'm mentioning that even before we get into some of the questions that he encourages us to ask, because that's a very different way to approach coaching. If you think coaching requires you to have all the answers, he would say that's wrong. He would want us not to give no advice. That's not the point of the book. You obviously can give some advice, especially if you're an expert in a particular area. But he says that he would encourage us to develop a habit of asking more questions and giving less advice. It doesn't mean you only ask questions and that you give no advice, but he would encourage us to ask more questions than we've been asking and give less advice than we've been currently giving. And he would argue that that does tend to produce better coaching outcomes. Now, one of the things that you'll notice early in the book is that when he starts giving the list of questions, one of the first things that he brings up is something he calls the kickstart question. It's one of the key questions that he introduces in the early part of the book. And the kickstart question is just this: what's on your mind? He encourages you to ask the person that you're coaching simply, what's on your mind? And he's very intentional to encourage us to use those words. What's on your mind? Not just what are you thinking about? Not just like some other way to phrase that, but what's on your mind? Because people seem to receive that question well. And what he would say is that the question, what's on your mind, when you ask somebody that, it's a question that encourages the individual that you're asking it to identify and to articulate things that become their most pressing concerns or issues, the things that have been maybe in some respects weighing them down, the things that have been on their mind the most. And Stanier considers this question, and almost the way he says, I'm going to quote him directly, he says, it's a fail-safe way to start a chat that turns into a real conversation. You want it to be a real conversation, not a surface level conversation. And so he says, kick it off, use the kickstart question, start it off by simply asking, all right, what's on your mind? Have them articulate their most pressing concerns, their most pressing issues, so that you know where you really ought to be helping and you get past kind of the formalities of chit chat. Something else he talks about in the book here is this idea of building a coaching culture. And he discusses the idea of creating a coaching culture within, even if you're a solopreneur, this works, but if you're part of an organization, this also works, where he says that the general tone starts to be a culture of asking questions and fostering curiosity, and that you make that something that starts to become a bit ingrained in the way people communicate with each other and work together. And he says, make this part of the culture. So as you're doing this in your coaching practice, as you're encouraging more question asking and less advice giving, he says that this can start to become a big part of the culture of what you're doing. And then he also encourages us to do something he calls taming the advice monster. And he says the advice monster is the instinct to provide solutions and advice rather than allowing others to explore their own thoughts and their own solutions. And so he starts giving us, as we're working through the book, and I'm trying to give you a good summary here before I give you the full list of questions, but he starts giving us strategies here of ways that we can tame the instinct to be the advice monster or the one who's giving all the advice, so that we could tame that instinct and become a more effective coach. And he would say that what that does is that helps you as a coach to become a much better listener, because effective coaching if you boil it down to one of the key elements of effective coaching, it requires active and empathic listening. And the book emphasizes the importance of, when you're coaching somebody, of being someone who listens with your full attention, and you want to be present in the moment. So if you're an advice monster, right? If you're somebody that's constantly giving advice, you're not going to be present in the moment when somebody's talking, because what you're going to be doing is thinking about the next thing that you feel compelled to say. And he would say that's not the best way to go about coaching, even though instinctively sometimes we think it is. He's like, no, you're not going to be in the moment. You're not going to be giving somebody your full attention. You need to be a better listener so that you're present in the moment. And admittedly, and I'm just going to just straight up admit this, whether you're watching us on YouTube or listening via the podcast, this is sometimes very difficult for me. And I think most coaches find this rather difficult, because I think, at least from my standpoint, maybe you agree, maybe you disagree, but from my standpoint, I think it can be hard to sit and listen when you actually have counsel in your mind, when you know something that you can offer that might indeed solve many problems for the client that you're trying to help. And when you've got that in your mind, when it's something that you're well aware of, when you think, yeah, you know what, if I say this, I think it'll solve it. I think sometimes what we end up doing, instead of listening and being present in the moment, we start thinking ahead. We think we've got the solutions. And by the way, there's a time for offering specific solutions. But what ends up happening is, if we rush directly to those solutions without demonstrating empathy, what we're basically giving, or what we're failing to do, I guess I could say, is we're failing to give the person that we're trying to coach an opportunity to have some emotional buy-in in this conversation. If the conversation to them doesn't feel like a conversation at all, if it just feels like you're just lecturing them, that's not easy to emotionally buy in to a conversation like that, if it feels like a lecture. And so there's a time for offering counsel, but he would say be very judicious in how you dish that out. Be somebody who listens. Demonstrate that you're present in the moment. Another one of the questions, though, in his list that he brings up that I wanted to highlight before I give you the full list is something that he calls the awe question, the AWE question. And the reason he calls it the awe question, or the AWE question, is because the question itself asks, and what else? AWE, and what else? And what he's doing when he asks this question is he's trying to take somebody down a train of thought that gets to deeper level meaning. And it encourages the person that you're trying to coach to start exploring maybe additional possibilities or additional ideas, or just some deeper thinking that traces the root of what's behind whatever they consider a problem. And Stanier, I hope I'm saying his last name correctly. It's spelled Stanier. But Stanier, he considers this question to be somewhat magical, the way he phrases it in the book. He says it's somewhat magical, asking, and what else? Because he says it seems to create more wisdom, more insights, more self-awareness, and more possibilities out of thin air. He says just adding and what else to what you're already saying or what you're already asking just seems to add more wisdom and insight and self-awareness and possibilities just out of thin air. And because of that, he calls it almost the magical question, the awe question, the and what else, AWE. Stanier also highlights the significance of asking strategic questions that lead to insight, action, and positive change, because his goal the whole time, you can see as you go through the book, is he's trying to move beyond superficial discussions and drive meaningful progress. And I think a big complaint that he has is that so much coaching stays superficial. It doesn't really get to the deeper level needs. And so overall in this book, and again, for those of you on YouTube, I'll hold up the cover here so you can see what I'm talking about. But the coaching habit, it's advocating for a shift in mindset. And the shift is we go from a mindset of providing answers to asking questions. And he's saying that he's had much more positive effect on he's been coaching by asking the than he has from just trying to provide all the answers to every little thing that they could possibly try to address. He says that this has led to more engagement from the people that he's working with. He feels that he has empowered people to make better decisions for their businesses and for their lives. And he says that it's also been helpful when he's used some of these approaches when working with teams and organizations. So he really stands by the approach. But like I said a couple times here, there are 7 main questions that he encourages coaches to ask. And I'm just going to give you the list right now. So it starts off with question 1, which is the kickstart question. And the kickstart question is this: what's on your mind? So he just wants you to start off with what's on your mind. And so it's a very open-ended question. What's on your mind? It's something that you're just encouraging somebody to unload. Maybe there's something that's been burdening them for a while. So what's on your mind? You don't know exactly what they're going to answer when they say that, when you offer that to them. But he says, kick it off with that. That's the kickstart question. What's on your mind? The second question that he goes to is the awe question, which we already mentioned, the AWE question, and what else? Because that helps you dig down a little bit deeper into what's going on with their thinking or what one thought leads to another, that sort of thing. The third question, we haven't brought this one up yet. The third question on his list is what he calls the focus question. And the focus question is this. He says, what's the real challenge here for you? What's the real challenge here for you? The idea is that you're trying to break down the problem, why this is a difficulty. What's the real challenge here? So that's the focus question. You're trying to dial them in. So especially if you're working with somebody that tends to be a bit scatterbrained, or they tend to, as you're listening to them, they take one story and it leads to another story and it leads to another story. And after a while, you're thinking, I'm not sure what problem I'm supposed to be helping them with to begin with. So the focus question is helpful for the person sharing, but it's also helpful for you as the coach. When you ask them, what's the real challenge here for you? You're asking them to be super specific about the problem, the challenge, the struggle that they're experiencing. Question number 4 on his list is this. He calls it the foundation question. What do you want? Right? What do you want? He says that's the foundation question, because this is helping them. Like Stephen Covey talks about the idea of working with the end in mind, right? You're trying to aim for the goal. So you're asking them, what do you want? The foundation question, because this is trying to help you figure out what the goal is that you're actually trying to work toward, what they would like to be experiencing as an outcome for what they're trying to do, why they even came to you for coaching. And question number 5 on his list is related to this. And he says he calls it the lazy question, but he simply says, how can I help? How can I help? So he goes from what do you want to how can I help? And in that moment, the person that you're seeking to help tells you exactly what kind of help they want from you, what they're hoping you're going to be able to do for them, what value they hope to get out of this session. I know sometimes when I've been coaching people, I've thought to myself, the question is like, how can I be the most help to this person? Well, when you ask them the foundation question, what do you want? And then follow it up with what he calls the lazy question, how can I help? You're basically helping yourself as well by learning exactly what you can do to be of assistance to the person that's coming to you for help. Number 6 on his list is this, the strategic question. And the strategic question helps people eliminate some of the clutter from their life and from their behavior. It's basically a question that goes like this. If you're saying yes to this, what are you saying no to? Now, this is something that we wrestle with in my household quite frequently, and anyone with a busy schedule probably has to wrestle with this from time to time. You know that if you're typically the type of person that says yes to all kinds of ideas and opportunities, that means you're automatically closing your schedule and your life off to other things. So if you're saying yes to something, that's an automatic no to something else, but we don't always think about that in the moment. And so the author here, Michael Stanier, he's encouraging us to just think about this from this standpoint. He's saying, if you're saying yes to this, what are you saying no to? That's question number 6. And then his final question is the learning question. It's question number 7. And this helps you to figure out what benefit they've received from their time with you. What was most useful for you? That's what he asks in the learning question. What was most useful for you? And he would say that when done right, you want to connect the learning question to the original Kickstart question to create what he calls coaching bookends. And he believes it's wise to connect these questions to make sure your conversations are of highest value to the person that you're trying to help. So the kickstart question when you're starting it off is what's on your mind? And then the learning question is what was most useful for you? You want to connect the two. You want to use these as bookends on this discussion. And over the course of however long you talk to somebody, maybe it's 45 minutes, maybe it's an hour, he wants you to work through these 7 questions. Now, again, I'm going to encourage you to check this out. The book is called The Coaching Habit. And again, it's a very well-written book. It's a book that when I checked how many reviews it had on Amazon, it was up over 14,000 positive reviews. So that tells me that it's a book that a lot of people have read. It came out in 2016, so it hasn't even been out all that long. But The Coaching Habit, very well written, impressive reviews. And I'm guessing after having checked it out this week, the reason that this book is popular is because it actually does give you a metric that you can use when you're working with future clients and trying to help them solve problems. I recommend it highly, whether you are a seasoned coach or whether you are somebody that's brand new at this. I'll tell you, one of the struggles that brand new coaches tend to have is they wonder, how should I structure the session? And they also wrestle with, do I know enough to actually be helpful? And then seasoned coaches often wrestle with, was I helpful? Did the help that I offered, did it land? Was it actually what the client needed? And Stanier, as he puts these questions together and kind of shows you how they work. I know I've given you an overview, but you definitely want to check the book out as a whole if this concept interests you. What he's trying to do is he's trying to give you a metric that will work when you're sitting down with a client and you're actually going to provide value in the time that you speak with them. So definitely check it out. I found it helpful. I hope you found it helpful as well. And I want to encourage you, whether you are new at platform development or if you've been doing it for a while, pursue coaching as part of what you're offering, if that's something that fits with your giftedness and your personality. For many people, they find it a very enjoyable and edifying part of their overall platform. And for those of you that are also interested in your platform becoming something that replaces your traditional income, you may find that before you even get around to recording courses, or before you write books, or before you create products that you could sell, or advertisements that you could sell, or anything like that, before you get around to that, you might find that coaching is the very first thing that you can offer as a service on your platform that enables you to get toward your monetization goals while helping people in deep and personal ways through the expertise and the authority that you've developed on your subject. And again, I hope that The Coaching Habit is a book that you find immensely helpful. I certainly found it helpful. I hope you do as well. But that's it for us this week. Again, we'd invite you to stop over at platformlaunchers.com. We'd love to interact with you over there. You could get our planning guide over there to help you figure out how to outline your platform. You could try our membership community for the next 2 weeks for free. And we'd love to meet you. And in the meantime, we hope you have a wonderful week, and we look forward to catching up with you again right here next time. Take care.